Hello, everyone, and welcome to Webo Live. This is a 5 days a week show, but the Friday episode is special because I do a chill stream, which basically I don't know what it means, but the idea is that we should talk about things that are not related to the tensions that we get every day through news. And last Friday's chill stream was very successful because a lot of people enjoyed it a lot. This Friday, my idea is to share with you some stories that I wrote as a child. I'm a science fiction and fantasy writer. I've written comic books, stories, etc. But I've been writing my entire life, and my family has been very careful with respect to protecting the heritage of that creativity. So I have 4 files full of stories that I wrote between the ages of 15 and 20, and most of them are from my uh, from the latter part of that period, like early days of college. And the older ones, many of them have been lost mercifully. Unfortunately for me, some of them have not been lost, and those stories are still here. And I will be reading you those stories today. Uh, but I hope that there are other things that also happen in the live stream. Feel free to leave your comments in the chat. And if there is a question, I'll be happy to answer it. But let us not go into the heavy duty stuff today, because the purpose of today's live stream is to, as the title says, chill. So before I proceed, I'll remind everyone that in case you're listening to this on the podcast, only the audio version of it, you're probably doing it on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcast, Ghana.com, JioSavan, etc. And if you are doing that, then please consider sharing the episode on social media with someone who you think might enjoy it or find it worth their time, because these are long episodes. Podcasts are long, in-depth conversations happen in them. And if you can, leave a rating or a review of the podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcast, or whichever app you're listening on, because that really helps the show. uh, Also, a reminder to everyone in the chat. Oh, okay. So the chat is happening. Chat is a little too chill today. I'll get to it momentarily. I will remind everyone that the channel has a join button. There is a join button below. If you click the join button, you can become a member of this channel. If you become a member, the benefits you get is that you get some emojis that you can use in the chat, and they're special emojis that are not available to everyone. In addition to that, whatever comments you make will be read first. So that was the usual thing. And let me look through the comments a little bit. How have people been? If you're new, please say hi in the chat. And regular people, hello, say hi. Welcome to the new people. Rahul says, hi, sir. Very evening. A very evening to you also, Rahul. Avara Billa says, Vimo looking extra cute in the thumbnail today. Yeah, I wanted the Friday night chill stream to be a little different, so I smiled a bit more. I think it looks creepy. Manmat says he looks young for his age. Oh, God. No, okay, thank you. Zia says, hi, Vimo, looking forward to the stories, hoping that they will be in English though. Yeah, they will be in English. I used to write in Hindi, like a very small amount of my output was in Hindi, which is why the Hindi comic book industry never quite got anything from me. I remember at one point of time I was approached by a Hindi comic book publisher, and they wanted me to write something, and I was like, मैं लिख तो दूंगा, but मैं कभी और कहीं और काम कर रहा हूँ, and according to the rules here I can't work for someone else. So that did not take off. Had I been unemployed at that time, I would have had my name in at least some Raj Comics issues. But we shall see. Nadir is here. Hi Nadir. Nadir, thank you for being a member. Friday Night Tales, happy to be here. Kavan says, I'm supposed to give my followers 3 poems based on the prompt they suggested in my Insta story, but I'm here instead. You can tell your followers to also come here. Next, no, is Friday ka to nahi ho payega. But sometime, if you want to use this platform to talk to your followers also, you can do so. Uh, at least in the matters of poetry reading, etc. For political propaganda, no. Arun says, do you prefer sci-fi or fantasy? Sci-fi is a subgenre of fantasy. Fantasy is basically stories of a speculative variety. These days, most professional sci-fi writers use the term speculative fiction. Editors call it speculative fiction. Magazines call it speculative fiction. Conventions are happening. So science fiction is a little bit of a dated term, and it goes back to the time when actual scientists, were writing stories. There are some people who think that scientists writing science fiction is a good thing. Other people think that that's a terrible idea because scientists don't know their heads from their asses when it comes to literature. You'll find that a lot of science fiction that we all grew up reading was very heavy on the science and kind of low on sociology. Isaac Asimov himself was not a huge fan of sociological issues uh, being raised in science fiction in a very direct manner, and he said it's a fad. But fortunately, it was not a fad, and these days science fiction is primarily about sociological issues from the perspective of non-white communities. So that's a good thing. But yeah, to answer your very short question in a very rambly manner, uh, to answer your very short question in a non-rambly manner, I prefer fantasy, and science fiction is part of it. Kaushal says, some Friday you should just stream a movie on Discord. Yeah, and get a copyright strike on YouTube, right? Oh, you meant on Discord only? I don't know how that is possible. Even Discord has rules, man. It can't work. By the way, Swapnil, who runs the channel Our Bhav Horror Stories, has a channel where he tries to teach people how to write. It's called Writing Whiting. He tried to do a live stream a couple of weeks ago where he wanted to show people a scene and then write on the basis of it. But because of YouTube's copyright things, the live stream got blocked. So, yeah, maybe Discord might be a good solution for him. I will suggest it to him. Or if he's here, he can just take the advice. मूड क्या है सर? कब से स्टोरी पार्ट स्टार्ट? अरे अभी कर रहा हूँ सर, अभी कर रहा हूँ। फाइल यहाँ पे साइड में रखी है। आई एम जस्ट वेस्टिंग टाइम बिकॉज इट्स टू एम्बैरेसिंग। देयर इज अ बैटमैन स्टिकर ऑन टॉप ऑफ इट। इट्स दिस फैट एंड दिस जस्ट फाइल नंबर 1 आउट ऑफ अ टोटल ऑफ 4 फाइल्स। बट लेट मी ओपन इट। मैं बस कमेंट्स पढ़ रहा था। पेपर बॉय says, where do you work? I work for a corporation, a multinational corporation called Vimo Live. I am the only employee and the CEO there. um right. Kavan says, "Do you think Do you think there is or can be a market for game book slash choose your own adventure type fantasy books in India?" I don't know. I'm not a huge fan of interactive fiction. Like, I don't like stories which ask me to choose which way to go. I want to understand the author's perspective. There is a thing on Netflix called Minecraft Story Mode. I couldn't stand it. I want to sit back and enjoy a well-told story. And when the story asks me, "Acha, ab kya karu?" I feel like I'm lost. The story is the authority. I don't want to I don't want a story that asks me what to do. I am there to submit myself to the experience, not to interact with it. But maybe I'm old. Maybe that's why. But anyway, I will not. I will not waste people's time more, and I will open the file. Let's see. I'll have to move the mic a little bit. Yeah, this is this is good. Um, right. There's a story called Cycle. Then there's a story called Cycle. Can you see it? Yeah, Cycle. This is my handwriting, by the way. There is one called Extinction Overruled. It's about an AI. There is a story called no. There is a play called The Sunrise, and then there is something called The Instrument. I think I'll read The Instrument. Peak on the Horizon. Uh, there is a story called Brainstorm. This is not science fiction. Oh, okay. So this is a first person narrative thing, and the first sentence in the story is, "Now let me first tell you that this is not science fiction." So clearly I was trying to go for the, yeah, this really happened thing. But yeah, let us start with these three and we'll get there. Keep leaving your comment as you proceed, and I will read comments whenever between stories. Cool. uh, what is the channel name of Swapnil? Swapnil's channel, horror channel, is called Our Bhav. AAR, sorry, AAVIRBHAAV. And the other one is called Writing, but I don't know its URL. But yeah, this I will read to you. It's called The Instrument. I'm just wondering if there is something embarrassing here that. Uh, hmm. Yeah, these are very bad, by the way. I'll warn you, I'm reading it in a state of extreme embarrassment, but these are very bad, and I will not be judged. Okay? If you have judgmental opinions, keep them to yourself. So here it goes. Mm, 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 mm. The Instrument. It's science fiction, and I have written bad next to the title, so clearly even I didn't like it. The sun setting in the western horizon gave the sky. Sorry, I'm confused about the mic setup thing. Yeah. The sun setting in the western horizon gave the sky a red gleam, and through the skies on magnetic roadways, Val's jet cycle floated with its regular soft zinging sound. Val's face was rock hard. His gaze was fixed on the control panel. In the red and green blinking lights, he seemed to be twisting his mind into a lump. All thoughts condensed into one. He, in his utter wonder, seemed to be merging into a sea of ecstasy. Oh God. Can you see where you are going? Said Renu from the back seat. I have been noticing this absent mindedness in you for many days. Val didn't say anything. He considered such manners to trivial in front of what he was soon to achieve. He turned at the next crossing and stopped on the dot in front of Renu's sky residence. Renu got off and asked him, "You will be coming to the institute tomorrow, won't you?" "Don't know," said Val and sped away. So see, he saw such an emo and intense character. God. At home, the same stony glare was the problem of his parents. "What has gotten into that boy?" asked his father. But like all, he didn't have an answer. He didn't take refreshments and straight away went to the basement. What could a basement in a sky apartment mean but a bulge in the bottom? The large screen, which was foldable and had been temporarily installed by Val in the basement, was ordered to resume yesterday's operations. Val looked around and smiled. His instruments, the only things in the world that he did not object to his stony glare. He had been over the weeks trying utterly hard, like the able hacker he was, to make access to top secrets of the chronological department's computer systems, and the process bumped against their time machine design. He had, with all his might, been trying to manufacture one with his limited engineering skills. Though he really didn't hope to succeed, but still, a science buff like him could not resist the temptations of having a short interchronodimensional ride. Interchronodimensional ride, समझे? For all the fantasy it may have sounded like to a person of the last millennium, time travel was now an accepted truth. But keeping in mind its negative uses, it was kept in strict government security and used when very much needed. Yeah, this is torture. As it was Val's aim to be a time traveler, he kept himself endowed with the knowledge of all the equipments needed: the paradox indicator, the camouflage instruments, and the hard nature that was necessary characteristic for time travelers. 29th of March 3026. Val, in his basement, whistling a tune to himself, tightening the final screw, was going crazy with anticipation. Going crazy with anticipation. In fact, it was a miracle that till now he had refrained himself from shouting with delight. I'm not fixing the grammatical mistakes, by the way. I'm just reading it as it is written. A final comparison, and Val did it. He shouted. He had actually made a short range singularity. He had actually made a short range, singularly polarized time machine, though it had only one drawback. Val could not decide what time to visit. He just activated the machine and went either a short period back or a short period further in time. Elated, he ran out but refrained from telling his parents of his achievement as he realized it was illegal. But he could not hide his happiness. He worked with his father on the roof, fixing the cables. That day, even at the institute, Renu was amazed by the change of nature. At night, he entered the basement again. He considered he considered no crime to have just one good experience. He fixed up the apparatus and activated the machine. The energy source he had installed would only allow for his physical existence in another time dimension for a few minutes. Taking all the risks, he pushed the button. A blinding light burnt into his body and mind, and a second later, he found himself standing right there, though he knew it was another time. He came up into the hall and looked at the watch come calendar. He saw that he was exactly 2 days further from his time. Though it was the same place, he felt a strange feeling as if he was miles away from home. He dared not move a step. As luck would have it, he didn't have to. The doorbell rang and he saw himself coming out of his room and opening the door. The feeling was strange. He even once felt that he saw himself turning and looking at him. But he didn't think that the Val in front of him was startled. Now, that was strange. He saw himself open the door and let Renu in. She had a limp. Still limping, Val heard himself say, "Yep, the surgeon said it would vanish by tomorrow," Renu answered. "But you must be careful next time." Val, by all this, had understood that Renu had an accident and had broken her leg. He was listening carefully to hear more when he felt everything around him going round and round. The next instant, he was back in his time machine. He mumbled, "I will not let that happen to Renu." The next day, he was with Renu all the time. He accompanied her to the institute and back. In the evening, they were walking by the complex down on the earth. It was his idea. He wanted her to get away from the heavy traffic up in the sky roads. Suddenly, a vehicle lost control from the road above them and crashed near them. Val ran with Renu to the nearby building entrance and sat down by the gate. He was about to tell her about his experience when two workers who were carrying metal girders lost balance by their side and fell down. Well, out of his efforts to shield Renu, fell down and rising feverishly, looked at Renu and asked, your leg, is it all right? Can you walk? Renu, astonished, asked, Why are you so worried about my leg? Nothing's going to happen to it. What is the matter? Hmm. Val told her everything and she listened in peace, hiding her bewilderment. Then she put a hand on his head. Val, she said, with all your intelligence, you're too simple. You can't prevent my leg from being hurt. Val looked up, his usual stony glare taking hold of him once again. Renu continued, What you saw was, of course, true, but it was only a consequence of what is going on now. The time being is but a cause of what will come in the future. Val at once realized the phenomenon and nodded feverishly. Renu laughed at him and said, You are a fool. She surely had testified to her status of being a student of chronological sciences. For a minute, Val sat still, then a wry smile gave way to his thoughts. Don't you feel frightened now, Renu? Asked Val. Yes, I am frightened. Knowing in advance about a broken leg is a unique, but I must say unwelcome experience, answered Renu. Never mind. Let's just take it easy. Saying so, he gave her a powerful pat on the knee. The pat turned out to be really powerful because it was not until a second later that both came to realize that Renu had displaced a joint. Later at home, Val thought it over and realized that he was, after all, the cause of what he had seen. Had he not seen Renu limping and had he not tried to prevent it, the effect wouldn't have been affected. In other words, it was his destiny. He had been an instrument of destiny. In the evening, he demolished his time machine. At 8, when Renu came limping, he, from the doorway, turned and really saw himself near the basement entrance. That guy is in for a big surprise, thought Val. Then he turned and asked Renu, still limping? Oh God. This was written 28th December 1999. And yeah, the writing is atrocious. I don't know why I'm doing this. This is pure torture. This is pure torture. I think at least part of the motivation behind the story might have been the optimism of the year 2000 coming, because we've been reading science fiction and growing up with science fiction, uh, uh, and all the nice great things that are happening in the future, flying cars and sky cities and time machines being controlled by a government, etc. This appeared to be a great idea, and the story is obviously very bad. But I was very young when I wrote it. The grammar is bad. The motivations are terrible. The descriptions are terrible. There is a lack of character development. There is not even any kind of semblance of, how do you put it? In fantasy, it's called a magic system, but it's extremely vague. And let me just not talk about it anymore. There is a story called Cycle. This is, I think, hold on. This was written in, this was written 2001. Uh, August 20, 2001, this was written. So, 2 years after that story. Let me just read a few comments before I start. मूड क्या ऐसे कभी बॉडी हॉरर पे लिखा है क्या रेफरेंस? टिटाने रॉ स्टोरी में कौतुक श्रीवास्तव का चैनल ट्राई कर, नहीं मुझे बॉडी हॉरर अच्छा नहीं लगता. आई डोंट लाइक हॉरर. Raj says, Hey Vimo, can you tell us about USA abortion bill? Raj, we spoke about this in yesterday's episode. You can watch it. Metal Man says, Just joined. What stories are we reading? Vimo originals. No, stories that I wrote when I was. Stories that I wrote more than 20 years ago. Pretty much. Sridhar says, You can stop after some time and summarize the paragraph you read. Yeah, fiction, that doesn't work very well, Sridhar. Vikrant says, Thought it would have been a treat to watch, despite who knows how many unfinished script contains what great things. Um, Jack says, Can you make available sci fi story to read like in PDF or pick? I do have some stories out which are better than these. I wrote them last year. They're over on they're over here. on my website, on the Instamojo page, instamojo.com/vemo. If you go there, you can find my better science fiction. Please don't consider these stories to be, a sample of what you might see on my Instamojo page, because these are terrible. These are things I wrote a long time back. Um, Mood क्या says थोड़ा slow पढ़िए sir. You don't have to prove anything to us. We already respect you for your clarity of thought. No, I'm reading fast because it is unbearable for me. It's like I said that I'll read it to you, and I am reading it to you. But the process of reading it is like, if I was reading something written by someone younger than me, I will be full of encouragement. But the fact that I myself wrote this garbage is quite, it's a sad truth. It's a terrible truth to come to terms with. Rahul says, can you mention the grammatical mistakes, please? Because I find everything is perfect so that I can learn something over here, sir. Rahul, I will do that some other time, not with these stories. Metal Man says, I'm drawing the world map for my fantasy novel while watching. Oh, great. Nice. World building is always fun as long as you don't get carried away with it. Metal Man says, I was planning to write world building notes while listening to music, but can't do that while listening to words. Ah, yeah. Uh, Monmouth says quantum chronodynamics is a real thing, by the way. I did not know it back then. And you'll find that a lot of things like this dry kind of science fiction, where much of the focus is on the dynamic of the idea itself. I find that my style was kind of I was trying to write like Isaac Asimov and perhaps H.G. Wells. And of course, I did not succeed. Or maybe I did. Um, Kavan says, I don't think it's bad. I kind of like it. Kavan, you don't know what you're saying. Zia says, oh wow, I didn't expect that twist. Samad says, I was 6 year old back then. Show us the handwriting, please. The handwriting. No, this is a type thing. My uncle used to take these to his office and type them out for me. So that's what you're hearing. Rahul says, I was not born in that. Yashwan says, grammar was bad. It sounded great to me at least. Yeah, so usage issues were there, spelling mistakes were there, and I'm not going to go back to it. Arun says, these stories are older than me. Samad says, don't feel embarrassed, Vibha. Many of us couldn't even write what you wrote when you were that young. That's okay, man. Nadir says, the time machine. I am glad you did not write this. Nadir says, the time machine story is apt for an episode of Ahat or something like that. Ahat. Ahat hona chahiye. The funniest thing about this, the most bizarre thing about this story is that her leg broke and she had to go to the surgeon. And apparently, that injury was because he patted her knee very hard. Manmat says, of course, we love, especially I do, your old works, but खेद तो रहेगा. Please, बचपन का प्यार बताओ फिर से. Harsh says, hello, Vimo, do you write poetry or stuff? I aspire to be a good poet. Dushyant Kumar is a great inspiration. Harsh, I don't do poetry. I write sometimes what may be described as prose poetry, and I post it on your quote, but I'm not a poet, and I don't really have a great I don't really have great skill in that department or great appreciation for poetry either. But that's just me. I'm a very prosaic person. Nadir says maybe he was boy Superman and didn't know his own power. Please, that's even more embarrassing. I'll just proceed to the next story. It's called Cycle, 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 not bicycle, just cycle. And it was written in August of 2001. This is handwriting, by the way. Let me just show you. This is handwriting. The last concussion had somewhat discolored the silvery outer surface of the giant space tube. Almost nonchalantly, the central artificial intelligence had dispatched a repair robot to the most dented parts of the tube. The robot changed form to fit snugly into one of the supporting shafts and hold on to the surface. Then it switched the magnetism off. There was another tremor from within the tube, and the robot lost its hold. As it drifted off into space, it activated the magnetism again, but the tube's surface was now out of range. The central artificial intelligence, nonchalant as ever, dispatched another robot for the repair work, this time after modifying it to be able to maneuver itself in space. No attempts were made to retrieve the first repair worker. It was hardly any use. The robot was customized for repair works alone, and by the time the space vehicle covered another light minute, the manufacturing units would have completed 20 more such robots out of the metal alloys derived from passing asteroids. Meanwhile, the abandoned repair robot had changed form to look like a somewhat odd box. It has shut off its consciousness from the blackness all around and resumed a state of dormancy. Over thousands of years, it miraculously escapes scores of blazing stars and at last falls prey to the pull of an ordinary yellow star in one of the remote arms of a still uncharted spiral galaxy, to be known by its future residents as the Milky Way. As the box enters the rich atmosphere of the third planet in orbit around the yellow star, its dormant program awakens. Now aware of the pressures of the atmosphere, the robot's sensors give it an almost instantaneous assessment of the planet. This world is still in its infancy. Great waves of heat surge from within it. The surface is changing. The surface is changing. The robot lands on one of the less volatile patches of the planet's surface and, being true to its program and having found nothing worth repairing, resumes dormancy. Centuries pass, Earth's cooling process continues. The interplay of geological forces brought into existence massive gas clouds. As the cooling continued, great rains bore down in full fury upon the planet's surface, starting the chain of waves which would enchant Earth's future children as oceans. Farther up, in the space between Earth's solar siblings, many of whom still fumed in envy after not having been able to reach levels of efficiency as high as their new pregnant sister, a conflict ensued. An interstellar voyager of an interstellar voyager of so rock-like an appearance that it could easily have been mistaken for an asteroid by any cosmic eyes that may have been beholding it, was being attacked by two smaller robotic foragers, probably on the hunt for fuel and data of unknown origin. The Voyager successfully deflected a plasma beam and turned on its offensive gear. A cube shaped projectile, small but of incredible mass, erupted out of one of the asteroid's semi dark grooves and took the first Forager entirely unaware. While the first one's debris was still drifting away from the site of the explosion, a second projectile was launched towards the remaining Forager. The Forager tried to dodging but was followed by the cube. Then, a translucent force field enveloped the Forager and the cube bounced off it, coming straight for its home body. The asteroid ship's navigators veered, but the impact was strong anyway. One of the domes atop the asteroid, among the few signs that the asteroid actually being a sp- one of the domes one of the domes atop the asteroid, among the few signs of the asteroid actually being a spaceship, cracked and erupted soundlessly, throwing the Voyager into the sphere of influence of the young Earth. The low grinding sound of the repair robots emergence from the depths of the Earth's crust were almost imperceptible against the lashing of waves at the beach. The robot's sensors took quite a few microseconds to resume function after centuries of dormancy. Then it became clear there really was a body in need of repairs. In the middle of the beach, quite oddly, though not to the repair robot, was a rocky hill. The robot changed into a suitable many limbed body and trotted across the sand. Then four of its extremities elongated and became more complex, and it started climbing up the hill. At each groove, the robot's hands changed form to provide the best possible grip. Then the last heave of the robot's body was complete, and it immediately headed for the ruined dome. Inside, the guiding intelligence lay crippled. A couple of sentry robots indulged in the last-ditch efforts, trying to well, trying to weld back the frame, but their respective programs did not cover emergency like this. The repair robot advanced. To the Voyager's dying navigating machine, it appeared to be just a bundle of blocks. The metallic blocks of various sizes arranged themselves in a smooth sliding format to look almost like a sentry. The repair robot improved its accuracy, and in less than a minute, there was absolutely no difference between it and the sentries. It placed its now dexterous hand on the navigator's sensor, and there was a swift communication by means of electronic pulses. The sentries received traces of, the sentries received traces of it too, then started the repair work. The navigator's frame was fixed, and during the next few days, the repair robot moved around the asteroid, fixing other problems. It was absolutely a matter of chance that on the fourth day, when the repair robot finished welding a bit of minor machinery to its place, its sensors told it that no more repairs remained to be done. The very same moment, the asteroid ship's navigator finished backing up its database and decided to leave the planet. No decision had been made on this matter. Still, by chance or by decree of fate that rules the respective coinciding lives of all spacefaring machines, the gates to the Voyager closed with the now dormant repair robot still inside. What made it all the more striking was the total absence of love, gratitude, and other such states which the future children of Earth would use as basis for much of their aimless lives. As the Voyager crossed the edge of the solar system, the first live cells started the cycle of life on Earth, which would go round and round until life reached its pinnacle in creatures that were to continue fate's cycle. That was the story. And I dare say this is slightly better than the first one because it doesn't have people. I wanted to talk about, like, two strangers basically meeting and helping each other, and there being no emotions involved because that is their nature. The first robot was programmed to repair, and the second thing that crashed on Earth was there because it was also attacked by certain other robots. And then just it was just a wild slice of life thing about fates crossing each other. And yeah, slightly better than the first one, but still quite bad. um, right. So let me read a few comments. Taranga is laughing. I don't know why. Uh, your handwriting is decent. I don't know why you thought it was bad. It's not decent. As in, yeah, I suppose at this point it was okay. It was at least readable. But at later point in life, something terrible happened to my hand. Like, you see my thumb? Yeah, it goes like this. So I can't hold pens with great strength. My grip is either too tight, which ends up hurting my fingers, or it is too loose and the pen falls off. So I have not been able to write properly for a long time. Fortunately, at around the time when this problem happened, I got introduced to keyboards. So ever since then, I have not had to actually use my hands to write. Kavan says, got any advice for a really non smart person, me wanting to write a smart detective who solves bizarre crimes where it's hard to determine what is impossible? Kavan, I would advise search YouTube for videos about there are a few videos how to write characters who are smarter than you. Like, Sherlock Holmes is a really smart character, and the level of intelligence he has, clearly his writers don't have. So how do they make him look really smart? So you can find that. That is what you need. And I've seen videos like this, so maybe they will help you. Nadir says, you were in first year when you wrote Cycle. The prose is pretty good. Sounds technically very mature. Yeah, it sounds. I was 2001 May. Yeah, first year. Yeah, first year. How did you know? I was in +3 first year. The Batman Begins says, can I share the Telegram channel for those who are interested in geopolitical and political news? यहाँ पे एक तो चैट में किसी को लिंक दिखेगा नहीं because links automatically get marked as spam. So you can ask people, you can share your Twitter handle or your Instagram handle. You can ask people if anyone is interested, message me and I will share a link with you. मूड क्या says हे विमो वो बॉडी हॉरर टिपिकल हॉरर नहीं होता एक डिफरेंट जॉनर है मुझे पता है बॉडी हॉरर क्या होता है एंड आई एम नॉट इंटरेस्टेड I don't like horror. I don't like body horror even more. Even I like body horror even less. Taranga liked it. Mon liked it. Batman Begins says your handwriting. Nadir says, what is life's purpose if not to help each other heal and move forward? I mean, maybe smile in the process. Yeah, story mein sab kuch tha except the smiling. The Ra says you should read Rhythm Roger, written by Himanshu Rai. It's a sci-fi book and story is kind of Harry Potter. Okay, I'll check it out. Batman says, okay, thank you, Vimo. So, right, I will now read the last story for this evening and then we will just do regular chat. The next story, like, I don't want to read these really long ones. Actually, I could. This was handwritten. So, what is it about? It's called Extinction Overruled. It's about an AI system and humanity. And okay, I'll read this one. It's called Extinction Overruled. It was written on 13th October of the year 2000. It seems I get really creative in the second half of the year, no? But yeah. Hmm. Nadir says, how did I know you were in first year? Why, I simply entered your story with a thread tied to the present, found out your academic status when it was being written, then tugged on the thread to return. Nadir is Val. Nadir wants to be a character in the worst story ever written. But yeah, let me read Extinction Overruled. इसका handwriting किसी को देखना है तो देख लो. Yeah. Uh, yeah, this is a science fiction story written by me in 2000. I don't know why I'm wasting time. But okay. The story starts. Dr. Book shivered impulsively as he was led into the room. The temperature was lower, and he reasoned with himself that his shivering was justified. He managed to fool himself. Greetings, Doctor, boomed the voice of Ultimate. It seems that we are destined to meet at longer intervals than planned. Destiny indeed, thought Dr. Book. Nice words from the supreme force on the planet to a mere old human. Again, I'm not fixing the grammatical errors. Um, I have reports of your work being unduly delayed. Ultimate came to the point. I am at the job, Ultimate. Book shivered. I am just looking for sources. Sources? Ultimate boomed, and the big screen flashed bright yellow. You have the entire planet's libraries and info sources at your disposal, and you still need sources? A craft sponsored by me is ready to take you anywhere you wish and at any time you will. An able team of neo humans work under you, and you still need sources? The sources I speak of are not available in the libraries. I'm having to scour the I'm having to scour the personal records in the private collections of some old but extinct dynasties. Book tried to keep his voice the least defiant, but he knew that Ultimate was a machine, however highly evolved, and its harsh tone just intended to psychologically taunt him into greater efficiency. Do it quickly, Doctor. Your work of history is a necessity for the future generations of neo humans, and that is my responsibility, Ultimate said and blinked out. Book came out into the heat of the outside, but he was still shivering. Soon he was sitting in a loose position on his craft and flying home, ruminating. This mic is getting in the way. Yeah. How early had the seeds been sown? Right from the beginning of the last millennium. Man tinkered with genes, choosing the best, discarding the rest. Strength, intelligence, and tact soon became as common as the senses. Soon man began testing the limits. Genes controlled everything, and that was a boon, as everyone believed. Peculiarities such as fear, anger, pain, disappointment started seeming absurd. Why not do away with them? And that was done. The neo humans were born. They were perfect, physically unparalleled, mentally sharp. As generations passed, perfection approached perfection. Today, there are around 500 old humans on Earth. These are the ones with little or no trace of artificial manipulation in their genes. This was because there were always people who abhorred the notion of genetic engineering. They passed to the next generations their legacy of staying away from engineering, and their descendants remained faithful. The world changed, and Ultimate came into being. Its rise was slow, almost undetected. A massive body of links all over the planet and in space too, in form of reconnaissance satellites, form its nervous system. It is the only authority on Earth controlling everything from kitchen appliances to aviation crafts, from systemization of the socio-cycle to the what? From systemization of socio-cycles to personal liabilities of all humans, old or new. Ultimate was originally formed to assist world governance. Soon its responsibilities increased and it became the government. Today, sorry, towards the middle of the last millennium, it was opinionated. Wow, opinionated? Why? Towards the middle of the last millennium, it was opinionated that dictatorship was the best form of government. Ultimate is benevolent dictatorship personified. Its thought, if it can be called that, encompasses virtue, care, responsibility, and of late, there has been the deep yellow shade of worry on its screens. Dr. Book sat up in his seat. Points of view made all the difference. It appeared today to him that mankind was on the verge of extinction. Tomorrow, however, by some quirk of fate, his faith in natural kindness may be restored. He fidgeted in his seat and ordered the craft to take him to the residence of Van Hux. There was a gentle click of obedience, and the craft shot up 500 meters and then took the direction in which Hux's house lay. Van Hux was an artist. He was also an old human and a friend of Dr. Book. Book's oval craft landed on the terrace and the entrance clicked open. Book stepped out and walked to the lift. 138, he said aloud when he reached the lift to denote the floor he wanted to go. He wanted to go to. Book hesitated at the door and wiped the sweat off his brow. It's hot, he said to himself. When Hux was giving the canvas the final brusque strokes, his wrists whipped mercilessly and the color droplets came to rest on his apron. Dr. Book came up from behind and saw the picture. It showed the figure of a man silhouetted against the setting sun. But the sun was burning fiercely. The man's shadow in front of him showed a long, grotesque image of his face. What? The man's shadow in front of him showed a long, grotesque image of his face. Wen turned just in time to hear Book say, "Hello, Hugs. If you're not busy, let's talk a while." Wen sat down without covering the painting. He seemed least bothered about it. The first question was from him. "How's your book coming about?" "Badly," said Book. "To tell the truth, I myself am not so enthusiastic about it." "It's useless," said Wen, who was not known for soft talk. "It's utterly useless. A book on the history of the entire human civilization? Who is to read it? The Neos? Or that ass Ultimate?" Book shuddered. He looked around suspiciously. It was hard to tell if they were being watched. Even the cameras on the Space Eyes satellites could be on them. "The romance," continued Hux, "related to history will mean nothing to the Neos. What is it to be? What is it to be for? Neos don't need it. Nor does the ass." Hux stood up with a jerk, and Book was startled. "Let's take a walk," said Hux. As they scaled the street and when Hux gave vent to the anger on Ultimate and the Neo humans, Dr. Book felt his clothes wet with sweat. It really was getting hot. This morning had been the coolest on the last week. In the last week, 38 degrees. On hotter days, it added 10 to 15 degrees. I had no idea how degrees work, by the way, because the kind of temperature variance I'm talking about, Earth would be uninhabitable. But maybe the Neos have ways of surviving it. Mm, 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 mm. Hmm. Uh, just look at those Neos, Hux was saying. Strong, tall, beautiful, smart, but invariably inhuman. Tell them that tomorrow the world comes to an end and they will want for it, and they will wait for it. Where is terror? Where is fear and anxiety? Book set to thinking. Man had populated the solar system and planets one by one, and the planets one by one had gained independence from Earth. Earth was prosperous now, but was life on Earth doomed to extinction like a bug under the celestial thumb of greenhouse gases and a near dead ozone layer? Had man, in an attempt towards perfection, done something grossly imperfect? Bear in mind that the year is 2000 and the ozone layer problem is everywhere in the news. That's why it is in the story. The status of the old humans in the society was precarious. As Ultimate grew, almost all human tasks were taken over by it. There was nothing it could not do. All science, all analogy, all speculation, and all fields, what it hadn't been able to do was find the root of something genetics could not explain: instinct. That ability to know something without having the preliminary knowledge. It had been proven long ago that genius is not hereditary. People among old humans who were geniuses were of ample value to Ultimate. Literary skills had been unsuccessful. Literary skills had been unsuccessful among neo humans. Literature means passion and feeling. How would anyone without fear, desire, and anger feel anything? Old humans were thus free to do their will, but were under constant observation. Book feared that the day Ultimate comes to know that the root of instinct and natural born talents, he would terminate the remaining 500 like him. So Book was worried that if Ultimate finds out what is it that causes passion and all that, he will have no use for them. When Hux kept talking, but kept sweating, Ultimate watched. Over the next 2 weeks, Dr. Book met with more luck than he had done before. And with relentless typing of fingers on word panels, His book was nearing its end, but Book wanted it to end in a hopeful way. He didn't see any hope though. Soon, Dr. Book was with Ultimate. Okay, here I'm hurrying up because I think I'm taking a 1 day break between stories and I'm losing patience and I'm hurrying up the prose. Soon, Dr. Book was with Ultimate. Doctor, do you remember my talking about the future generations of humans? I remember you talking of the future generations of neo humans, said Book. It seems to me that the views of a more agitated old human friend of yours have affected you a lot, said Ultimate. Van Hux is a genius, but only one among the 18 on my list. His eccentric views do happen to carry some weight. You were watching us? Book cried, and then, somewhat controlling his tone, said, but how did you hear us? We were strolling on the road. Were there transmitters on us? No. Ultimate screen went orange. My satellite eye made use of an ancient science of lip reading. I have in my database all the possible shapes human lips may acquire. The recording of your talk was quickly deciphered and drafted. Yeah. It is clear to see that I had not actually read much at this point. In the second In a second, there appeared on the screen the whole scene of Books and Hux's talk, with their precise voice imitations made by Ultimate. Dr. Book gasped, grunted, and said, but you agree that Van Hux was right. Ultimate's screen went deep yellow. I have been thinking of the same matter for weeks, and a plan is taking shape under the able supervision of all my consoles all over the world. Dr. Book said, what Ven meant was that somewhere in the process of discarding undesirable traits, maybe man has lost something interlinked. We both know that my book will mean nothing more than a record of events to the news. Spirit, instinct, emotion are all gone. Ultimate was inert, but did not blink out. Book continued. The reason I became a historian was that I considered it something more than facts. Now no one does. Perhaps you will be glad to know that I have finished my book. But what phrase am I to end it with? Will it be a farewell to mankind or will it be a goodbye to life on earth? I would want a note of hope for future generations. Book had spoken out for long, but questioned what are their what are their news for Ultimate? To populate the planet, Ultimate said. Well, Book nearly cried. My knowledge of history tells me that never before was that the purpose of people. To be, what is the use? Ultimate screen turned white. Do not regard me as being lesser in judgment than you, Doctor. You may suspend the work of your book for a while, and I assure you, you will be provided with a better note than the end to end it with. Ultimate blinked out, Book left for home. Right, do you guys really want to read more of this? This is quite bad. Right, let me take a break here and take a poll. If you want me to continue reading this, please let me know. This is so like it's a torture to read this, and I think it's not interesting for many people. Um, Cowan says it's very sweet. Reminds me of stuff from one of my favorite contemporary science fiction writer, Max Zoll. He writes stories that can be described as having creative ideas of Asimov, but told in a much more emotional and relatable way. They're not too long, many of them are just one or two slides. Short fiction is something that has come up really in the recent times. Manmat says at the age Vima was acing his creative writing. I'm not, this is not acing. This is not acing creative writing. By the way, IGNU में एक course था creative writing वाला, which I did do. And that was quite useful because there were, I think, two other people in it with me. And one of my college professors was the one who was teaching it. So it was quite useful. At the age when Vimo was acing his creative writing, I was writing autobiography of a cow. Needless to say, Vimo was way better. So grammar doesn't define you. You were good the way you were. No, sir, I disagree. But thank you for being kind. Kavan says you can find him on Insta or on his website. He did a 100-day sci-fi story challenge where he posted one story every day. There are some real gems in there. Okay. Monmon says, Vimo, are you reading any books these days? If yes, do share the name. I'm No, I'm not actually reading many books these days. I should. The idea behind doing a 5 day, uh, 5 days a week live stream was that I will have the weekend to myself, and I thought that maybe I could use the weekend to read books, but I am not actually doing that because the weekend is still going into creating content, and I think I should take the weekend, like I should at least have half a day to myself on each weekend day, on Saturday and Sunday, just to read and not do anything. Ayman is here. Nadir says, hi, Ayman. Uh, Nadir says, to be or not to be? That is the question. Munman says, how young were you when you started reading Asimov? I was in high school. We had a local library where old science fiction novels used to be available. I used to go there and read. Hmm. Nadir says, to be or not to be. Okay. Sudipto says, I'm in the first year, possibly about to have to go through yet another year of first year because my current university and college fucked up my disability benefits. Keyboard, my handwriting and handwriting speed is. Oh, yeah. I'll be honest. If like that sounds terrible because if I were to give an exam right now, I'll totally fail because I won't be able to answer all the questions in time because of my hand situation. Taranga says the premise is nice in the stories. Yes, I agree. The premises were nice, but doing justice to the premises is a different matter. A lot of things, uh, a lot of things are great on the idea level, but when it comes to execution, they're not very good. And execution is at the end of the day, it is all that matters. If execution is not good, then your the greatest idea is trash. It has no value. And I think I will never ever go back to that file again. This was a bad idea. One says Man in the High Castle by Philip K. Dick. It's so great. It's in YouTube as an audiobook. 8 hours listen time. Huh. I don't know how people manage to keep audiobooks on YouTube. Like movies get flagged, right? And if someone is picking, I guess if someone is not picking something up straight off Audible and pasting it onto YouTube, then that's a different matter. But people can totally record their own audiobooks, right? And upload them for free onto YouTube. So that's a thing that I don't know how YouTube has not gotten around to fixing that problem. I mean, not a problem for the readers or listeners, but for the authors. Kavan says, have you read any of the King Killer Chronicles books? If you did, what are your thoughts? Brandon Sanderson? No, I have not read it. I have not read King Killer Chronicles, and I don't think there's any chance of me getting to those books anytime soon. But if I do, I will let you know. Harsh says, this story seems interesting. Can you share some of these with us on your Insta story? Hey, hey. Insta stories pe, kaise? They're like 10, 12, 13 pages of handwritten text. How do you share? Kavan says, have you read Stanislaw Lem? If you did, which of his works would you recommend me to start with? I have not read Stanislaw Lem. So there isn't a book by him that I would be able to recommend you with. But anyway, guys, I think we can end today's live stream a little early. I think my choice of topic drove away a lot of people. There are like 10 people here right now. But before I end, I'll just remind people that this is a live stream that happens 5 days a week, Monday to Friday. Today is the last live stream of the week. Uh, we come live at 10 p.m. every night from Monday to Friday to talk about contemporary Indian affairs. And this audio is also available on uh, Spotify, Google Podcast, Apple Podcasts, Ghana.com, JioSavan, etc. If you want to support this channel, you can click the join button below and become a member. I swear most live streams are more exciting than this one because I actually talk and not read stuff. I need to stop reading things on live stream. But if you want to support my work on Patreon, you can do so at patreon.com/Vimo. You can make a monthly pledge or an annual pledge, and you can support me that way. If you don't want to, you can support me at my blog, which is vimo.stck.me. And there is a support button there. You can click on it and make a donation of your choice. If you want to listen to this podcast as audio only, you can do so at www.vimo.in. This episode is probably not going there. You can only get it on YouTube because I don't think it's going to be that interesting. But for everything else, this episode, this www.vimo.in is the one that you want to go to. And with that, I will take your leave. Taranga says, happy weekend. Thank you. Samar says, I think it has more to do with Friday. Maybe, maybe. Senior says, रविश कुमार के लिए आपके क्या विचार हैं सर? ये सर लंबे आंसर वाले क्वेश्चन है, इसका क्या जवाब देगा कोई? If you want to ask me, what do you think about that guy's opinion on X? I can say something because that's a specific question. लॉन्ग आंसर टाइप क्वेश्चन जो होते हैं ना, मतलब गाय पे निबंध लिखो, उसके बारे में कोई क्या बोलेगा? आई एम नॉट वेरी गुड एट दोज. आस्क अ स्पेसिफिक क्वेश्चन एंड आई विल डू माय बेस्ट टू गिव अ स्पेसिफिक आंसर. पिछले कुछ सालों से जब मैं इंस्टाग्राम पे लाइव कर रहा था तो ये भी होता था। कोई आके बोलेगा, "व्हाट आर योर व्यूज़ अबाउट वाटर?" एंड आई विल बी लाइक, इसके बारे में किसी का क्या ओपिनियन हो सकता है? इतना लंबा आंसर कौन देगा अभी? But yes, thank you for joining today. I will take your leave now. And before I go, I want to thank everyone for the entire week's joining on the live stream. This live stream works because you are here. That's it. Thank you. I will now. Mm, mm, how do I end it? Yes. Bye.